The fire crackled low in the gathering dusk. Reverend Samuel Clayton leaned forward, his weathered hands spread toward the flames. The travelers who'd joined him for the night sat quiet, waiting. One of them, a young man barely 20, finally spoke. "Reverend, you've been out here a long time. You ever see a real miracle?" The old man smiled. The firelight caught the deep lines around his eyes. "Just once," he said. "December of 1887, coldest night I ever lived through." He let the silence stretch, let them lean in. "I was 45 then, still had all my teeth and most of my hair." He chuckled. "Been riding circuit through Wyoming territory for near 15 years. Married folks, baptized babies, buried the dead. Thought I'd seen everything the frontier could throw at a man." The young traveler shifted on his bedroll. "What happened?" "I watched a woman sit down to die," Clayton said simply. "And I watched God answer a prayer I didn't even know someone was praying." He poked at the fire with a stick. Sparks rose into the darkness. "You want to hear it? It's not a short tale." They all nodded. The fire would burn for hours yet. "All right then." Clayton settled back against his saddle. "But you got to understand something first. This isn't one of those stories where everything turns out neat and pretty. People got hurt. People bled. And some of what happened, well, it didn't make sense until years later." He looked up at the stars, same stars that had hung over Wyoming that terrible winter. It started with the cold. Winter came early to Wyoming territory in 1887. By mid-November, the first snows had already locked down the high country. By December, the whole territory lay buried under white. And on the 15th of that month, the worst blizzard in 20 years swept down from Canada like the hand of judgment itself. I was in Cheyenne that night, waiting for the evening train to Silver Creek. The station was small, just a wooden platform and a waiting room with a pot-bellied stove. The stove was doing its best, but the cold was winning. Every time the door opened, the wind came in like something alive. I sat on a bench near the stove, my traveling bag at my feet. Around me, maybe a dozen other folks waited. A merchant heading east, a family of farmers, 2 cowboys who'd given up on finding work before spring. We all watched the snow pile up against the windows, and we all knew the same thing. No trains were getting through tonight. The station master came out around 6 o'clock. He was a thin man named Perkins, same fellow who ran the desk at the Cattleman's Hotel. "Folks," he said, "I just got word on the wire. All lines are shut down until this blows through. Could be tomorrow morning, could be longer." People started gathering their things. The family headed out into the storm. The merchant grumbled but followed. Soon it was just me and the 2 cowboys. And her. I hadn't noticed her at first. She sat in the corner farthest from the stove, away from the light, like she didn't want to be seen. She was young, maybe 25 or so. Dark hair pulled back severe. She wore a traveling dress that had seen better days. Thin shawl around her shoulders that wouldn't keep a sparrow warm. At her feet sat a leather bag. Medical bag, I realized. The kind doctors carried. She hadn't moved in over an hour. Just sat there, hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. The 2 cowboys left around 6:30. One of them glanced at her as he went. Looked like he might say something. Then he saw her face and thought better of it. The station master locked up the ticket window. "I'm heading home before this gets worse," he said to me. "You're welcome to wait inside if you want. But the stove will run out of wood in a few hours." "I'll be all right," I told him. "Got a room at Patterson's boarding house." He nodded and left. That's when I realized the woman had no intention of leaving. I'm a man of God. I've taken vows, but I'm also practical, and I could see plain as day that this woman was in trouble. I walked over to her bench. She didn't look up. "Pardon me, miss," I said gently. "Are you waiting for someone?" No answer. "The trains are shut down," I tried again. "Won't be another one until this storm passes." Finally, she raised her eyes to mine. They were dark, empty, like she'd already made her peace with something. "I know," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You got somewhere to stay tonight?" She shook her head once. "No." "There's a boarding house 3 blocks south. Mrs. Patterson runs it. Clean rooms, fair prices." "I don't have money for a room." She said it flat. No shame, no plea. Just fact. I felt in my pocket, found $2 and some change. Not much. I'd been planning to use it for my own lodging in Silver Creek. "Here," I said, holding it out. "It's not charity. Consider it a loan." She looked at the money, then back at me. "Thank you," she said, "but no. Miss, you'll freeze if you stay here." "I know." Same flat tone, same empty eyes. That's when I understood. She wasn't planning to wait out the storm. She was planning to let it take her. I'm ashamed to say I didn't know what to do. I stood there holding my $2, feeling useless. I should have dragged her out of there, should have made her take the money, should have done something. But I was a circuit preacher with barely enough to keep myself fed, and she was a grown woman who'd made her choice. So I did the only thing I could. I sat down on the bench across from her, bowed my head, and I prayed, not out loud, just quiet in my heart. "God, I don't know this woman's name, don't know her story, but I can see she's drowning. If there's any help for her in this world, send it now, because come morning, she'll be past helping." I sat there maybe 10 minutes, eyes closed, listening to the wind howl. Then I heard it, horse hooves on frozen ground, coming fast. I opened my eyes. The woman hadn't moved, hadn't even looked up. The door burst open. Wind and snow exploded into the room, and a man walked in. He was big. That was the first thing you noticed. Not tall exactly, but broad through the shoulders, built like a man who'd spent his life working with his hands. He wore a heavy coat, good quality, wide-brimmed hat pulled low, boots that cost more than most men made in a month. He stomped the snow off those expensive boots, looked around the empty station. His eyes passed over me, stopped on the woman. "Evening," he said to both of us. His voice was deep. A slight Texas drawl underneath the Wyoming rough. I nodded. The woman said nothing. The man walked to the stove, pulled off his gloves, held his hands to the heat. "Hell of a night," he said. "Language, son," I said mildly. He glanced at me, saw the collar. "Apologies, Reverend, not fit for polite company." He went quiet for a moment, warming his hands, but his eyes kept drifting to the woman in the corner. Finally, he turned to her direct. "Pardon me, miss, are you waiting for the train?" She didn't answer, didn't even acknowledge he'd spoken. "Trains are shut down," I said. "Won't run again until morning at earliest." The man's jaw tightened. He looked at the woman again, really looked this time. I saw him take it in, the thin shawl, the trembling hands, the blue tint to her lips. "Miss," he said, his voice gentle now, "how long have you been sitting here?" No answer. He walked over to her, crouched down so he was at her eye level. Not too close, respectful of space. "My name is Jackson Thornton. I own a ranch about 20 miles north. I was in town on business when this storm hit." Still nothing from her. "I can see you're in a bad spot," he continued, "and I'd like to help, but I need you to talk to me. Can you do that?" For a long moment she just stared at him. Then, so quiet, I almost didn't hear it. "There's nothing you can do." "Well, now, I don't know about that." He stood up, started unbuttoning his coat. "First thing is to get you warm. After that, we can figure out the rest." He pulled off the heavy coat, stepped forward to drape it around her shoulders. She flinched, pulled back like he'd struck her. He stopped, held the coat in his hands, didn't move any closer. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. "I promise you that. I just want to help." Something in his voice must have reached her. She looked up at him, really looked, like she was trying to see into his soul. Whatever she saw there, it must have satisfied her. She gave a tiny nod. He stepped forward slow, gentle as a man handling a spooked horse. Draped the coat around her shoulders. The warmth of it hit her. I saw her eyes close, saw her breathe in deep. The coat smelled of leather and horses and clean mountain air. "There now," Thornton said. "That's better." He turned to me. "Reverend, would you mind giving us a moment?" I stood. "Not at all. I'll be outside." "In this storm?" He looked surprised. "I've weathered worse," I lied. Truth was, I wanted to give them privacy, but I also wanted to be close enough to help if needed. I stepped out onto the platform. The wind nearly knocked me down. Snow was coming sideways now. I couldn't see 10 feet. I huddled in the doorway, close enough to hear if someone called out, far enough to give them space. Through the frosted window, I could see them talking, or rather, I could see him talking. Her just sitting there wrapped in his coat. After about 5 minutes, he came to the door. "Reverend, I'm taking this lady to the hotel. She needs food and warmth. You're welcome to come along." "I appreciate it, but I've got a room at Patterson's." He nodded. "Suit yourself. But if you're heading that way, might want to do it now. This is only getting worse." He went back inside. I watched through the window. He was talking to her again. She shook her head, trying to refuse, I guessed. He crouched down, said something I couldn't hear. She shook her head again, more forceful this time. Then I saw him do something I'll never forget. He picked up her medical bag, looked in it, found something, held it up to show her. I couldn't see what it was. But whatever it was, it changed her mind. She stood up, unsteady on her feet. He reached out to help her. She took his arm. They walked to the door together. He pushed it open. "Can you walk?" he asked her. She tried. Made it 2 steps before her legs gave out. Without hesitation, Thornton scooped her up in his arms. Medical bag and all, she didn't protest. Just let her head rest against his chest. "Hotel's just across the street," he said to me. "You sure you don't want to come?" "I'm sure. God bless you, son." He nodded and stepped out into the storm. I watched him carry her across the street, watched until they disappeared into the swirling white. Then I bowed my head and said a different kind of prayer, not a plea for help this time, a prayer of thanks, because I'd asked God to send help for that woman, and he'd sent Jackson Thornton. I didn't know it then, but I'd just witnessed the beginning of something remarkable, something that would change not just 2 lives, but a whole territory. All I knew that night was that a man had walked into a train station and refused to let a stranger die. Sometimes that's all a miracle is. One person choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier. I gathered my bag and headed for Patterson's. The storm raged all night. But somewhere in that storm, in a warm hotel room, a woman was deciding whether to live or die, and a man was praying she'd choose life. The Cattleman's Hotel was the finest establishment in Cheyenne. 3 stories of whitewashed wood with glass windows and electric lights in the lobby. I heard about what happened next from several sources. The desk clerk told me some. Martha Cooper, who worked in the hotel laundry, told me more. But most of it came from Libby herself, years later, when we'd become friends. Thornton carried her through the front doors just after 7 o'clock. Every head in the lobby turned. The clerk, a man named Jenkins, hurried over. "Mr. Thornton, sir, what happened?" "Found this lady at the train station," Thornton said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "Near frozen to death. I need your best room. Hot food, coffee, and plenty of blankets. Also, send someone for Doc Williams if he's still in town." "Right away, sir." Jenkins grabbed a key from the board. "Room 12, 2nd floor. Shall I help carry her?" "I've got her." Thornton headed for the stairs. People whispered as he passed. A woman being carried by a man who wasn't her husband. In evening hours, no less. Scandalous. Libby heard the whispers. Even through her cold-numbed mind, she heard them. She should have cared. A year ago, she would have died of shame. But she'd already lost her reputation once. What was left to lose? Thornton kicked open the door to room 12, carried her inside, set her gently in a chair by the fireplace. The room was beautiful. Rich wallpaper, a 4-poster bed with a thick quilt, heavy curtains, and a fireplace already laid with wood. Thornton set down her medical bag, went to the fireplace, started building up the fire. "The hotel will send up some ladies' clothes," he said, not looking at her. "Yours are damp from the snow. We need to get you warm and dry." He worked quickly, efficiently. Soon flames were crackling. "There now," he said, standing. "That'll help." A knock at the door. A boy entered with a tray. Coffee, soup, bread. The smell made Libby's stomach clench. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. Thornton tipped the boy, sent him away, poured coffee into a cup. "Drink this. he said, handing it to her. Slowly. Too much heat too fast can be dangerous. She took the cup. Her hands were shaking so bad she nearly spilled it. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, pulled another chair close to the fire, sat down across from her. "You seem to know something about medicine yourself," she managed to say. Her voice was scratchy from the cold. He smiled. "You learn a few things running a ranch. Men get hurt, animals get sick. Nearest doctor might be 100 miles away." She sipped the coffee, felt warmth spread through her chest, felt her fingers begin to tingle as circulation returned. "But I'm no trained nurse," he continued, "which is what you are, I'm guessing. That's a medical bag you're carrying." She nodded. "I'm a nurse. Elizabeth Montgomery, from Philadelphia." "Elizabeth," he repeated. "That's a good, strong name. You go by Elizabeth or something shorter?" "Libby," she said. "Most people call me Libby. Libby Montgomery." He leaned back in his chair. "What brings a trained nurse from Philadelphia to Wyoming Territory in the middle of winter?" She looked into her coffee. Didn't answer. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "That's not my business. You don't owe me any explanations." "You saved my life," she said quietly. "I think I owe you at least that much." She took another sip of coffee, gathering courage. "I worked in a hospital in Philadelphia. There was trouble. A doctor who wouldn't take no for an answer. When I fought back, I was dismissed." She looked up at him, watched his face, waiting for judgment. His jaw tightened. Anger flashed in his eyes, but not at her. "A man forced himself on you," he said. It wasn't a question. "He tried to." She felt a ghost of satisfaction remembering. "I broke his nose with a bedpan." Despite everything, Thornton's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "Good for you. I hope it hurt." "It did," Libby said. And for the first time in months, she almost smiled too. "But it cost me my career. No hospital back east would hire me after that. I thought maybe out here, where doctors are scarce, my past wouldn't matter." "It doesn't," Thornton said firmly. "Out here we judge people by what they do, not by lies told about them back east." He stood, paced to the window, looked out at the storm. "A trained nurse is worth her weight in gold in this territory," he said. "Most towns are lucky to have a barber who can pull teeth and set bones." Another knock at the door. A maid entered with an armload of clothes. "Begging your pardon, sir," she said, "but these are the finest we have. Mrs. Patterson in room 8 donated them, said any woman caught in this storm deserves all the help we can give." "Thank Mrs. Patterson for her kindness," Thornton said. The maid set the clothes on the bed, left. Thornton turned to Libby. "I'll wait downstairs while you change. Take your time. Get warm." He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. "Mr. Thornton," Libby called. "Why are you helping me?" He turned, looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe because I know what it's like to be alone," he said quietly, "and maybe because I've been praying for someone like you to come along." "Someone like me?" "A healer," he said. "My ranch hands get hurt regular. I've lost good men because there was no one to tend them properly." He paused, seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "But more than that," he said, "I've been looking for someone with strength, someone with courage, someone who'd break a man's nose rather than let him take what isn't his." With that, he left, closed the door gently behind him. Libby sat by the fire, staring at the closed door. She'd expected many things when she came west. Hardship, loneliness, maybe even death. But she'd never expected to meet a man like Jackson Thornton. She looked at the clothes on the bed. A simple dress of blue wool, undergarments, stockings, even boots that looked like they might fit. She stood, walked to the mirror above the dresser. A stranger looked back at her, pale face, hollow eyes, hair wild from the wind. She looked like a ghost, like something already half dead, but her hands were steady now. The coffee had warmed her. The fire was driving back the cold. And for the first time since leaving Philadelphia, she felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. She began to undress, peeled off the damp traveling clothes, washed her face and hands in the basin. As she dressed in the borrowed clothes, she thought about what Thornton had said. I've been praying for someone like you, not just any healer, someone with her specific qualities, strength, courage, the will to fight back. She didn't know yet what he was offering, but she knew this. Whatever happened next, it had to be better than freezing to death on a train station bench. She braided her hair, straightened the dress, looked at herself in the mirror one more time. The woman looking back was still pale, still worn, but her eyes weren't empty anymore. She picked up her father's medical bag, held it close. Then she opened the door and went downstairs to face her future. Thornton was waiting in the lobby. He'd been talking to the desk clerk, but turned when he heard her on the stairs. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Appreciation, maybe, or respect. "You look better," he said. "How do you feel?" "Warmer," she said. "Thank you for everything." "Don't thank me yet." He gestured to a pair of chairs by the fire. "We should talk about what comes next." They sat. The lobby was mostly empty now, just a few late travelers seeking shelter from the storm. "I meant what I said earlier," Thornton began, "about needing a healer. It wasn't just talk." "You're offering me work?" "I'm offering you a position as the ranch's nurse. Good pay, comfortable quarters, all the medical supplies you need." It sounded too good to be true. Libby had learned to be suspicious of things that sounded too good. "What would you expect in return?" His expression grew serious. "Honest work for honest pay. Tend the men when they're hurt. Help with difficult births among the livestock when needed. Maybe teach some of the hands basic first aid. And nothing else?" Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Miss Montgomery," Libby, "I'm not the kind of man who takes advantage of a desperate situation. If something personal were to develop between us, it would be because we both wanted it, not because you felt obligated." She studied his face, looking for any sign of deception, but his eyes were clear, honest. "How far is your ranch?" she asked. 20 miles north of here. It's called the Double T, after my initials. Jackson Thomas Thornton. What do you raise?" "Cattle mostly, some horses. We run about 50,000 acres. Employ 60 men year-round. More during roundup. 50,000 acres, 60 men." Libby tried to imagine it. "You said you've been looking for a healer. Haven't you tried to hire a doctor?" Thornton laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I've tried. Posted notices in newspapers from Denver to Kansas City. Most doctors want to practice in towns, where they can build profitable practices treating wealthy patients. Ranch work is too uncertain, too dangerous, not profitable enough." "But you'd hire a woman?" "I'd hire anyone with the skills and courage to do the job," he said firmly. "Out here, we care more about what a person can do than whether they wear pants or a dress." Libby considered. It was better than anything she'd dared hope for, but nothing was ever that simple. "What aren't you telling me?" she asked. He smiled, actually smiled. "Smart as well as skilled." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "All right, here's the truth of it. The Double T is a working ranch, not a fancy estate. Winters are hard, summers are hot. We're 20 miles from the nearest town. You'd be the only woman on the ranch most of the time, except for Cookie's wife, Martha. She helps in the kitchen. I've been lonely in cities full of people," Libby said quietly. "At least ranch loneliness would be honest." "There's something else," Thornton continued. "I'm not just the owner of the Double T. My family has money, quite a bit of it. My father made a fortune in shipping before the war. I've done well with investments." He paused, met her eyes. "Some people might say you're trying to catch yourself a wealthy husband." Libby's chin came up. "Let them say what they want. I know my own heart and intentions." "I believe you do," Thornton said softly. "But I wanted you to know what you might be walking into." The fire crackled. Outside, the storm raged on. "When would you want me to start?" Libby asked. His face lit up. "Does that mean you'll take the position?" "It means I'll try it," she said carefully. "If it doesn't work out for either of us, I'll move on. No hard feelings." "Fair enough." He stood, extended his hand. "Welcome to the Double T, Nurse Montgomery." She stood, shook his hand. The moment their hands touched, she felt it. A spark, like lightning on a summer day. From the look in his eyes, he felt it too. This job was going to be more complicated than she'd thought. But for the first time in a very long time, Libby Montgomery was looking forward to the future. The inciting incident was complete. The woman who'd sat down to die had chosen to live, and nothing would ever be the same. "Now, I need to tell you something," Reverend Clayton said, shifting by the fire. "What I'm about to describe, I didn't see all of it myself. I was back in Silver Creek by then, tending my flock." He poked at the embers with a stick. "But over the years, I pieced it together, from Libby's own words mostly. She told me things she never told another soul. Confessions, you might call them. The kind people make when they need to set their hearts right before God." The young traveler leaned forward. "So how do you know it's true?" Clayton smiled. "Son, when a woman sits in a church and tells you about the moment she decided to live instead of die, you believe her, especially when her eyes fill with tears remembering it." He settled back against his saddle. The storm broke the next morning, and that's when Libby's real journey began. Dawn came cold and clear. Libby woke in the hotel room to sunlight streaming through frost-covered windows. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came back. The station. The cold. Jackson Thornton carrying her through the storm. She sat up. Her body ached from the cold, but the bone-deep chill was gone. She was warm, safe, alive. A soft knock at the door. "Miss Montgomery? It's Jack Thornton. I've brought breakfast." She quickly braided her hair, smoothed the borrowed nightgown. "Just a moment." She opened the door. Thornton stood in the hallway holding a tray. He looked fresh despite the late night, clean-shaven, his dark hair still damp from washing. "Morning," he said with a smile that made her heart skip. "How are you feeling?" "Better, much better." She stepped aside to let him enter. He set the tray on the small table by the window. Eggs, bacon, biscuits, jam. The smell made her stomach growl. "Eat up," he said. "We've got a 20-mile ride ahead of us. Storm's passed, but the cold hasn't. We're leaving today? If you're up to it. I bought you proper winter gear this morning. Coat, boots, gloves. Can't have you freezing on the way to your new home." Your new home. The words settled over her like a warm blanket. While she ate, Thornton stood by the window, looking out at snow-covered Cheyenne. "I should tell you something," he said, "about last night, about finding you at the station." Libby set down her fork. "What about it?" "It wasn't entirely by chance." He turned to face her. "I'd been in town on business, yes, but I was also making inquiries about finding a nurse or doctor for the ranch. You knew I was coming?" The hotel clerk mentioned that a woman with medical training had been asking about work earlier that day. "I went to the station hoping to find you." Libby felt something cold settle in her stomach. "So you knew who I was?" "I knew a trained nurse was supposed to be on the evening train from the east. I didn't know your name, didn't know your circumstances." He met her eyes directly. "I didn't know I'd find you half frozen and ready to die." She studied him, looking for deception. "Why didn't you tell me this last night?" "Because I wanted you to take the job based on its merits," he said, "not because you felt obligated to the man who rescued you." It made sense, and she found herself respecting him even more for the honesty. "Is there anything else I should know?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Just this. I'm attracted to you, Libby. Have been since the moment I saw you sitting in that station." Her breath caught. "But I want you to know," he continued quickly, "your job is secure regardless of your personal feelings toward me. I won't pressure you, won't make your position dependent on anything except your professional skills." Libby felt heat rise to her cheeks, not from embarrassment, from something else. "Thank you for being honest," she said softly, "and for the record, the attraction isn't one-sided." They looked at each other across the morning light, both knowing something significant was beginning, but also knowing it was too soon, too complicated. "Well," Jack said, breaking the moment, "finish your breakfast. I'll have the horses ready in an hour." After he left, Libby sat by the window, looking out at the vast white landscape. She was about to ride into the wilderness with a man she barely knew, to live among 60 strangers, to practice medicine in conditions she could barely imagine. A year ago, the idea would have terrified her, but that was before Philadelphia, before Dr. Harrison, before everything fell apart. Now she was ready for anything. She finished her breakfast and got dressed. They left Cheyenne just after 9 o'clock. Jack had bought her a heavy wool coat lined with sheepskin, leather gloves, boots that came up past her ankles, even a woolen scarf to wrap around her face. "You look like a proper Wyoming woman now," he said approvingly. He'd brought 2 horses, a big black stallion for himself, a smaller chestnut mare for her. "This is Rosie," he said, introducing the mare. "She's gentle, won't spook easy." Libby had ridden some back east, gentle horses in city parks, nothing like this. But she put her foot in the stirrup and swung up. The mare shifted, but didn't bolt. "Natural rider," Jack observed. "Good, you'll need that skill out here." They rode north out of Cheyenne, into a world transformed by snow. The storm had left everything white, pure and clean and blindingly bright. The sun reflected off the snow until Libby had to squint against the glare, but beneath the harshness was beauty, the kind of beauty that took her breath away. Mountains rose in the distance, sharp peaks cutting into blue sky. Closer, the land rolled in gentle waves, covered in white like a clean canvas waiting for spring. "It's incredible," Libby said. "I've never seen anything like this." Jack looked pleased. "This is nothing. Wait until spring. When the grass is green and the wildflowers are blooming, there's no prettier sight in all of Wyoming." They rode in comfortable silence for a while. The only sounds were horse hooves crunching through snow and the wind singing across the prairie. After about an hour, Jack pointed to a line of trees ahead. "That's Crow Creek. We'll stop there to water the horses." The creek was half frozen. Jack broke through the ice with a rock, let the horses drink from the clear water beneath. While they rested, Libby asked the question that had been nagging her. "You said you've been looking for a healer. Why is it so important to you?" Jack's expression changed. Something painful flickered across his face. "I lost my wife 3 years ago," he said quietly. "Rebecca, she died of fever. I'm sorry. The doctor from town came. But by the time he got there, she was too far gone. He said there was nothing he could do." Jack picked up a rock, threw it hard across the frozen creek. "But I keep wondering, if someone had been there sooner, someone who knew what they were doing, maybe she'd have lived." Libby understood. Grief and guilt mixed together, the terrible what-ifs that haunted the living. "Sometimes there's nothing anyone can do," she said gently. "Even the best doctors lose patience." "I know." He turned to look at her. "But I also know that I've lost good men on my ranch, men who died from injuries that should have been survivable, because there was no one there who could help them." He walked back to his horse, checked the saddle. "After Rebecca died, I made myself a promise. I'd find someone, a doctor, a nurse, anyone with real medical training, so that the next time someone got hurt, they'd have a fighting chance." "Is that why you've been praying?" Libby asked. He nodded. "Every night for 3 years. I asked God to send me a way to save lives, to make Rebecca's death mean something." He looked at her. "And then I found you at that station, half frozen, ready to give up, and I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the answer." Libby felt tears prick her eyes. "You think I'm an answer to prayer?" "I think you're a gift," Jack said simply, "and I aim to treat you accordingly." They mounted up and rode on. But the conversation had shifted something between them, made it deeper, more real. By midday, they reached the boundary of the Double T. Jack pointed out the markers, posts driven into frozen ground with the ranch brand burned into them. 2 T's back to back. 50,000 acres, he said, from here to those mountains, and another 20 miles beyond. Libby tried to comprehend it. 50,000 acres. More land than she'd ever imagined one person could own. "How many people live on the ranch?" she asked. "Depends on the season. Right now, about 60 men. Come spring roundup, that'll go up to near 100, plus Cookie, his wife Martha, and now you." They crested a hill, and there it was, the Double T spread out in the valley below like a small town. The main house was large, built of logs and stone with a wide front porch. Smoke rose from its chimney. Nearby stood a bunkhouse, a barn, corrals, a blacksmith shop, various other outbuildings. Even from a distance she could see men working, moving hay, tending horses, going about the business of keeping a ranch alive through winter. "There she is," Jack said with obvious pride. "Home." As they rode down into the valley, men began emerging from buildings. Word had obviously spread that the boss was bringing someone. They gathered in the main yard, maybe 20 of them, all ages, all sizes, all watching with curious eyes as Jack and Libby rode up. Jack dismounted, helped Libby down from her horse. "Boys," he called out, "I want you to meet Miss Elizabeth Montgomery. She's our new nurse." Silence. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in. Within seconds, the whole group was cheering. Libby felt her cheeks burn. She wasn't used to such welcome. An older man stepped forward, gray beard, weathered face, eyes sharp as broken glass. "Name's Tom Bradley," he said. "I'm the foreman here." He looked her up and down. Not lecherous. Assessing. "A woman nurse," he said. It wasn't quite a question, not quite a statement. "A trained nurse," Jack corrected. His tone was mild, but there was steel underneath. "And the best thing that's happened to this ranch in 3 years." Tom's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Ma'am?" "Mr. Bradley," Libby said. She kept her voice level, professional. "I look forward to working with you." Another man pushed forward, young, maybe 18, lean and eager. "I'm Danny Morrison, miss. I cut my hand on some barbed wire yesterday. Been paining me something fierce. I'll take a look at it once I get settled," Libby promised. Jack led her toward a small cabin about 50 yards from the main house. "This will be your home," he said, opening the door. The cabin was simple but well built. A main room with a fireplace, a small bedroom, a kitchen with a wood stove. Someone had already lit a fire. The rooms were warm and welcoming. "Cookie's wife Martha stocked the kitchen," Jack explained, "and I had the boys bring over furniture and linens." He led her to a room she hadn't noticed, opened the door. Libby gasped. It was a fully equipped medical office, examination table, cabinets full of supplies, surgical instruments gleaming on clean white cloth, medicines, bandages, everything organized and ready. "Jack," she breathed, "this must have cost a fortune." "A good nurse is worth a fortune," he said simply. "Besides, I ordered most of this months ago, hoping I'd eventually find someone to use it." She walked around the room, running her hands over the instruments. Some of them were better quality than what she'd had in Philadelphia. "Thank you," she whispered. "This is more than I ever hoped for." "Don't thank me yet," Jack said with a smile. "Wait until you've seen what some of these cowboys can do to themselves. You'll earn every penny of your salary." That first afternoon passed in a blur. Martha Cooper arrived within an hour of Libby's arrival. She was a stout woman in her 50s, round face, kind eyes, hands that had worked hard all her life. "Welcome, dear," she said, pulling Libby into a hug before Libby could protest. "Lord knows we need you here. These men are always getting themselves hurt." She showed Libby around the cabin, pointed out where everything was kept, gave her tips about living in Wyoming winter. "You'll want to keep that fire going all night," she said. "Temperature drops fast after dark, and don't go outside without telling someone. Easy to get lost in a snowstorm, even just walking from here to the main house." "I'll remember," Libby promised. By evening, she'd seen her first patients. Danny with his infected hand, a cowboy with a sprained ankle, another with a cough that had been lingering for weeks. She treated them all efficiently, cleaned Danny's wound properly, wrapped the ankle, mixed a tonic for the cough. Word spread fast. The new nurse knew what she was doing, but not everyone was convinced. Tom Bradley watched from a distance, arms crossed, face unreadable. When the last patient left, he knocked on her door. "Miss Montgomery, got a moment?" "Of course, Mr. Bradley." He stepped inside. stood by the fire, didn't sit. "I want to be straight with you," he said. "I'm not sure about this, a woman practicing medicine on a working ranch." Libby kept her voice calm. "You doubt my abilities? I doubt anyone's abilities until I see them proven." He looked at her directly. "I've been on this ranch 15 years, seen men die from injuries that should have been survivable, seen others live through things that should have killed them. And I don't know you. Don't know if you can handle what this place will throw at you." He paused. "But the boss trusts you, and I trust the boss, so I'll give you a chance." "That's all I ask," Libby said. Tom nodded, turned to leave, stopped at the door. "One more thing. The boss is a good man, best I've ever worked for. If you're just using him to get a roof over your head, I'll know, and I won't be happy about it." Libby's chin came up. "Mr. Bradley, I'm here to work. Nothing more, nothing less. Whatever happens between me and Mr. Thornton will be honest. You have my word on that." Tom studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good enough." After he left, Libby sat by the fire, exhausted but satisfied. She'd survived her first day. That evening, Jack knocked on her door. "Thought you might like some company," he said. He held 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Martha makes the best in the territory." "That sounds wonderful." He came in. They sat by the fire, drinking hot chocolate, talking about the day. "Tom giving you trouble?" Jack asked. "Just being protective of you, I think." Jack smiled. "Tom lost his daughter 12 years ago, Sarah. She was just a child, got sick with a fever. By the time they could get her to a doctor, it was too late." Libby's heart clenched. "That's why he's skeptical of me. That's why he's skeptical of everyone in medicine, but he'll come around once he sees what you can do." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind sang across the prairie. "Can I ask you something?" Libby said. "About Rebecca." Jack tensed slightly, but nodded. "Go ahead." "You said she died of fever, but there's more to it, isn't there? Something you're not saying." He was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. Finally, "She was pregnant, 3 months along. We'd been trying for years. She was so happy." Libby waited, didn't push. "The fever came on sudden. One day she was fine. The next she was burning up. By the 3rd day she'd lost the baby. And by the 5th day, she was gone." His voice was steady, but his hands gripped the cup so tight his knuckles were white. "The doctor said there was nothing he could have done, said sometimes these things just happen. But I keep thinking, if someone had been there, someone who knew about women's medicine, someone who could have acted faster." "You can't think that way," Libby said gently. "It'll drive you mad. I know, but I can't help it." He looked at her. "That's why finding you felt like a gift. Like maybe I could finally do something, finally save someone." Libby reached over, placed her hand on his. "I'll do my best," she said. "I promise you that. But you have to know, I can't save everyone. No one can." "I know," he said softly. "But maybe you can save some, and that's enough." They sat together until the fire burned low. Then Jack stood to leave. "Sleep well," he said at the door. "Tomorrow Cookie will want to show you the kitchen gardens, and Martha's eager to give you the full tour." After he left, Libby sat alone in the darkness. She thought about Rebecca, about the child who'd never been born, about Jack's grief that he carried like a stone, and she thought about her own losses, her own grief. She went to her medical bag, opened it, pulled out a photograph she kept wrapped in silk, her parents, young and smiling. Her father in his doctor's coat, her mother in a Sunday dress, both dead now, both gone because of lies and cruelty. Reverend Clayton paused in his telling, poked at the fire. "Now I need to tell you about Libby's father, because understanding him is understanding her." He pulled his coat tighter against the night chill. His name was Dr. Henry Montgomery, one of the finest surgeons in Philadelphia, taught at the university, published papers, saved hundreds of lives. "What happened to him?" the young traveler asked. "He was murdered," Clayton said flatly. "Not with a gun or a knife, with lies. 15 years earlier. Philadelphia, 1872. Young Libby sat in her father's study. She was 12 years old, small for her age, but fierce with curiosity. "Papa, what are you doing?" Dr. Montgomery looked up from his medical journal, smiled at his daughter. "Reading about a new surgical technique for repairing damaged hearts." "Can you fix a broken heart?" "Sometimes, little one, if the break is in the right place, and if you're very careful." He gestured for her to come closer, showed her the diagrams in his journal. "See here? This is the heart. These are the chambers. The blood flows in this direction." Libby studied the drawings with intense focus. "It's like a pump," she said. "Exactly. Very good." Her father beamed with pride. "You have a sharp mind, Libby, like your mother." "Will you teach me to be a doctor?" He laughed. "Women can't be doctors, sweetheart. It's not allowed." "Why not?" Because men think women aren't strong enough, smart enough." "That's stupid." "Yes," her father agreed. "It is stupid, but it's the way things are." He closed the journal, pulled her onto his lap. "But I'll tell you a secret. You don't need to be a doctor to help people. Nurses save as many lives as doctors do, maybe more, because they're there when the doctors aren't." "Can women be nurses?" "Oh, yes. And good ones are worth their weight in gold." Libby nodded, already deciding. If she couldn't be a doctor, she'd be the best nurse in Philadelphia. "Papa, will you teach me, even though I can't be a doctor?" He hugged her close. "I'll teach you everything I know." And he did. For the next 10 years, Henry Montgomery taught his daughter everything he could. Anatomy, physiology, surgical technique. He let her observe his operations, helped her get into nursing school. He was so proud the day she graduated, top of her class at 22. "You're going to save lives, Libby," he told her. "I know it." But 2 years later, Henry Montgomery performed a routine surgery, removing a tumor from a wealthy merchant's abdomen. The patient died on the table. These things happened sometimes. Even the best surgeons lost patients. But this patient was connected, powerful. And his family wanted someone to blame. They hired the best lawyers, found an ambitious young doctor named Edmund Harrison to testify against Henry Montgomery, to say the surgery had been performed incorrectly. It was a lie. But Edmund Harrison was convincing, and he was willing to say whatever the lawyers paid him to say. Henry Montgomery was found guilty of medical malpractice, stripped of his license, barred from practicing medicine. The shame was too much. He dedicated his life to saving people, and now he was labeled a killer. 3 months after the verdict, Libby came home to find her father dead. He'd taken laudanum. Left a note saying he couldn't live with the dishonor. Libby's mother died of grief 6 months later, and Libby was alone. She kept working as a nurse, kept her father's medical bag, kept his instruments polished and sharp. She didn't know that Edmund Harrison had a student, a protege named Marcus Harrison. No relation, but the same kind of ambitious cruelty, and she didn't know that Marcus Harrison worked at the same hospital where she'd found employment. Not until the night he cornered her in the supply room. Libby jerked awake, heart pounding, covered in cold sweat. The nightmare again, the same one she'd had every night since leaving Philadelphia. Dr. Marcus Harrison's hands on her, his breath hot on her neck, his voice whispering things that made her skin crawl, and then her hand closing around the bedpan, the satisfying crack as it connected with his nose, the blood, the screaming. She sat up. The cabin was dark except for the dying embers in the fireplace. She was safe. She was in Wyoming. Harrison was 1,000 miles away, but her hands were still shaking. She got up, added wood to the fire, made herself tea. Outside, the stars were impossibly bright, the kind of stars you only see far from cities. She stood at the window, looking out at the vast darkness. Tomorrow would be her first full day of work. She needed to sleep, needed to be sharp, but sleep wouldn't come. So she did what her father had taught her. She worked. She went to her medical office, started organizing supplies, taking inventory, making notes of what she'd need to order. She was deep in concentration when she heard it, shouting, outside. Men's voices raised in alarm. She grabbed her coat, her medical bag, ran out into the night. The bunkhouse was ablaze with light. Men crowded around something on the floor. "Let me through," Libby said, her voice cut through the chaos. The men parted. Tom Bradley knelt beside a young cowboy. The boy was conscious, but pale, clutching his arm. "What happened?" Libby asked, dropping to her knees. "Snake," Tom said tersely. "Rattler. Must have been sleeping in his bunk, woke up when he rolled over, bit him on the forearm." Libby's mind raced. Rattlesnake bite. In winter. Unusual but not impossible. The snake would have been sluggish from cold, might not have injected much venom, or might have injected all of it. "How long ago?" she asked. 5 minutes, maybe less. She opened her bag, pulled out a tourniquet, tied it above the bite. "This is going to hurt," she told the boy. "What's your name?" "Peter, ma'am." "All right, Peter. I need you to stay calm. Can you do that?" He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Am I going to die?" "Not if I can help it." She pulled out her surgical knife, clean and sharp, the one her father had given her. "Someone hold him," she ordered. "This is going to be bad." 2 men grabbed Peter's shoulders, held him firm. Libby made a quick, clean incision over the bite marks. Peter screamed. "I know," she said. "I'm sorry, but I have to get the venom out." She squeezed the wound. Dark blood welled up, and with it, hopefully, some of the venom. She worked quickly, efficiently, drew out as much as she could, cleaned the wound with carbolic solution, bandaged it tight. "Get him to my cabin," she ordered. "I need to watch him through the night. If the venom is still in his system, he'll start showing symptoms within the hour." They carried Peter to her cabin, laid him on her bed. Libby pulled up a chair, started her vigil. Tom Bradley stood in the doorway, watching. "You know what you're doing?" he asked. "I've treated snake bites before, not rattlesnakes, but the principle is the same. And if the venom's already in his blood, then we pray," Libby said simply. Tom was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'll stay. Help you watch him. You don't have to." "I know." He pulled up another chair. "But Sarah was about his age when she died, and I couldn't do anything for her. Maybe I can do something for him." So they sat together through the long night, watching Peter for signs of venom poisoning. By dawn, the boy's color had improved. His breathing was steady. The swelling around the bite was minimal. "I think he's going to make it," Libby said. Relief washed over her. Tom nodded, but there was something different in his eyes when he looked at her now. Respect. "You did good, Miss Montgomery," he said gruffly. "Real good." Word spread fast. By breakfast, every man on the ranch knew that the new nurse had saved Peter's life. And when Libby walked to the main house for breakfast, the men she passed tipped their hats, spoke respectfully. She'd proven herself. But as she sat at the long table eating with the crew, she couldn't shake the feeling. This had been easy, a snake bite, something straightforward. What would happen when she faced something harder, something she couldn't fix? That moment was coming. She could feel it. And when it did, would she be strong enough to face it? The weeks passed. February turned to March. The snow began to melt. Libby fell into a routine. Morning rounds checking on anyone who was injured or ill. Afternoons in her medical office. Evenings sitting with Jack on her porch, talking about everything and nothing. Those evening talks became the best part of her day. Jack told her about running the ranch, about his plans for expansion, about the challenges of keeping 60 men fed and safe through winter. She told him about nursing, about her training, about the patients she'd saved and the ones she'd lost. They didn't talk about the attraction growing between them, but it was there, in every accidental touch, every prolonged glance. One evening in early March, Jack brought up something he'd been avoiding. "Libby, I need to tell you about my time in the war." She set down her coffee. "You don't have to." "I want to." He stared into the darkness. "I was 18 when I enlisted. Thought it would be an adventure. Thought I'd come home a hero." "How long did you serve?" 4 years. 1861 to 1865. Saw action at Shiloh, Antietam, Gettysburg. Places where boys went to die by the thousands. His voice was flat, emotionless. The way people talk when the emotion is too much to bear. "We didn't have enough medical staff, not nearly enough. Men would lie in field hospitals for days, screaming, bleeding, begging for help that never came. He turned to look at her. I watched my best friend die of an infected leg wound. Simple injury. Should have been survivable. But there was no one there who knew how to treat it properly. By the time a surgeon got to him, gangrene had set in. They amputated, but it was too late. What was his name? Libby asked softly. Thomas Brennan. I named my son after him, the one Rebecca and I never got to have. Libby reached over, took his hand. I held him when he died, Jack continued. Promised him I'd make it mean something, that I'd find a way to save lives, to make sure other men didn't die the way he did. Is that why you came west? Partly. I couldn't stay in Boston after the war. Too many memories, too many ghosts. And when Rebecca agreed to come with me, I thought maybe I could start over, build something good, something that would honor Thomas's memory. He squeezed her hand, and then Rebecca died, and I failed again. You didn't fail, Libby said firmly. You can't save everyone, Jack, no matter how much you want to. I know. But when I found you at that station, I thought maybe this was my chance. My chance to finally keep my promise to Thomas, to Rebecca, to myself. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Libby spoke. My father taught me surgery, she said. Did I tell you that? No. He was a brilliant surgeon, taught at the university, saved hundreds of lives, she paused. And then he was destroyed by a lie. She told him the story, about the trial, about Edmund Harrison's false testimony, about her father's suicide. So when Marcus Harrison attacked me, she finished, it wasn't just an assault. It was like my father's death happening all over again. Another Harrison taking everything from me. Jack's jaw tightened. Harrison? Same name as the man who destroyed your father? Marcus was Edmund's student. I don't think they were related, but they were cut from the same cloth. Ambitious, cruel, willing to destroy anyone who got in their way. And this Marcus Harrison, he's still in Philadelphia? I assume so. Why? Jack's expression was dark, dangerous. Because if he ever comes near you again, I'll kill him, Jack. I mean it, Libby. I've killed men before, in the war. I can do it again. I don't want you to kill anyone, Libby said. I just want to be free of him, free to live my life. Jack took a deep breath, forced himself to calm down. You're right. I'm sorry. But the thought of someone hurting you, he shook his head. It makes me want to do violence. I know, Libby said, but the best revenge is living well, being happy, proving he couldn't break me. Are you? Happy? She considered. I'm getting there, this place, these people, you, it's helping. Good. He stood. It's late. I should let you sleep. But at the door he turned back. Libby, what we're building here, between us, it's real, isn't it? Not just gratitude or loneliness or convenience. It's real, she said softly, and it scares me. Me too, he smiled. But the good kind of scared. After he left, Libby sat alone in the darkness. She was falling in love with Jackson Thornton. She could admit that now. But love meant vulnerability, meant risking her heart again. Was she ready for that? Before she could answer, she heard shouting outside. Not alarm this time, excitement. She opened her door, saw men running toward the corrals. What's happening? She called to a passing cowboy. Danny Morrison's trying to break thunder, the man called back. Fool kid's going to get himself killed. Libby's blood ran cold. She grabbed her medical bag and ran. By the time she reached the corral, a crowd had gathered. In the center, Danny sat on the biggest, meanest-looking horse Libby had ever seen. The horse was bucking, twisting, trying to throw the boy. Get off, Tom Bradley was shouting. Danny, get off that horse right now. But Danny was grinning, showing off. One hand in the air like he was riding in a rodeo. The horse spun. Danny lost his balance. He fell. The horse's hooves came down, and Libby heard the sickening sound of bones breaking. The crowd went silent. Then someone screamed, "Get the nurse!" But Libby was already running. Reverend Clayton leaned forward, his voice dropping low. What I'm about to tell you I saw with my own eyes. I'd come back to the Double T that day to discuss wedding arrangements with Jack. He'd written me, said he was thinking about asking Libby to marry him. Wanted my counsel. He shook his head. I never got the chance to give it, because when I rode into that ranch yard, I found a boy dying and a woman about to perform a miracle. Danny lay in the dirt, not moving. His chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. Blood seeped from his mouth. His left leg was twisted at an impossible angle. "Don't move him," Libby shouted, dropping to her knees beside him. "Nobody touch him until I've examined him." Her hands moved over his body. Professional. Efficient. But her heart was racing. Multiple broken ribs, collapsed lung possibly, internal bleeding almost certainly. The leg would need to be set. But none of that mattered if she couldn't keep him breathing. "Danny," she said firmly, "can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Miss Libby? I'm right here. You're going to be fine, but you need to stay still. Can you do that?" He tried to nod, coughed. More blood. Tom Bradley appeared at her shoulder. His face was white. "How bad?" "Bad," Libby said honestly. "I need to get him inside, now. And I need 4 strong men who can lift him without jostling." "You heard her," Tom roared. "Move!" They rigged a stretcher from fence posts and canvas, lifted Danny with excruciating care, carried him toward Libby's cabin. Jack was suddenly there. He must have heard the commotion from the main house. "What happened?" "Danny tried to ride thunder," Tom said grimly. "Horse threw him, came down on his chest." Jack's face went pale, but his voice stayed steady. "What do you need?" "Ride to Cheyenne," Libby said as they walked. "Get the doctor. Tell him to come as fast as he can." "That's a 3-hour round trip minimum," Jack said. "Can Danny wait that long?" Libby looked at the boy on the stretcher, at the blood on his lips, at the terrible angle of his chest. "No," she said quietly. "He can't." They reached her cabin, carried Danny into the medical room, laid him on the examination table. Libby turned to the assembled men. "Everyone out except Tom. I need room to work." "But miss—" one of the cowboys started. "Out!" Her voice cracked like a whip. "And someone get Martha. I need her help." The men filed out, reluctant but obedient. Jack was the last to leave. He caught Libby's arm. "Can you save him?" She met his eyes, saw the desperation there, the memory of all the men he'd watched die. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I'm going to try." He nodded, released her arm. "I'll be right outside if you need me." The door closed. Libby stood for a moment in the sudden quiet. Then she took a deep breath and began. "I've watched a lot of doctors work," Reverend Clayton said. "In field hospitals during the war, in frontier towns, in mission clinics. But I've never seen anything like what Libby did that day." He paused. Let the fire crackle. "See?" Danny's chest was crushed, ribs driven into his lungs, blood filling up the space where air should be. Most doctors would have shaken their heads, said there was nothing to be done, maybe given him morphine to ease the pain while he died. But Libby didn't do that. "Tom," Libby said. Her voice was steady now, completely focused. "I need you to do exactly what I tell you. No questions, no hesitation. Can you do that?" Tom Bradley looked at the broken boy on the table, at the blood spreading across the white sheet. "Yes, ma'am." "Good." Libby was already washing her hands, scrubbing them until they were red. "Light every lamp in this room. I need to see perfectly." While Tom lit lamps, Martha burst through the door. "Lord have mercy, is he— He's alive!" Libby cut her off. "Martha, I need you to boil water. Lots of it, and bring me clean linens, the cleanest we have. Right away." Libby turned to Danny. His breathing was getting worse, more labored. His lips were turning blue. She'd seen this before. In Philadelphia, a man trampled by a carriage horse. The surgeon had tried to save him. Failed. But Libby had watched, had seen what the surgeon did, and, more importantly, had seen what he did wrong. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Sometimes the only way forward is through." You can't be afraid to cut, Libby, not when a life hangs in the balance. She picked up a scalpel. Her father's scalpel, the one he'd used for 20 years. The blade was sharp enough to split a hair. "Tom," she said, "hold him down. When I start cutting, his body is going to fight. Even unconscious, he'll try to move." Tom positioned himself, hands on Danny's shoulders. Libby felt for the landmarks, counted ribs with her fingers, found the space between the fourth and fifth ribs on the left side. This was where the blood was pooling, where the collapsed lung was drowning. She had to drain it, had to make a window for the lung to expand. One chance, one cut. Her hand was steady as she pressed the blade to Danny's skin. Outside, Jack paced like a caged animal. Around him, the entire ranch had gathered. 60 men standing in the cold, waiting, praying. Some of them had known Danny since he was 14, watched him grow from a scrawny kid to a young man, taught him to rope, to ride, to survive in this hard country. And now, he was in there dying. "How long's it been?" someone asked. 20 minutes, another answered. I sat on the porch steps, watching Jack pace, watching the men wait. I'd seen death before, plenty of it, but there was something about this moment that felt different. Maybe it was the way these hard men stood with their hats in their hands, or the way they kept glancing at that cabin door, hoping for a miracle. Or maybe it was the way Jack looked, like he was holding himself together by sheer force of will. "Reverend," he said, stopping in front of me, "you're a man of God. You believe in miracles?" "I do." "Then pray," he said. "Pray like you've never prayed before. Because that boy in there, he's 18 years old, his whole life ahead of him. And if he dies because I wasn't careful enough, wasn't smart enough to ban that damn horse, this isn't your fault," I said firmly. "Isn't it?" Jack's laugh was bitter. "I knew Thunder was dangerous, should have sold him months ago, but I thought I could break him, thought I could turn him into something useful." Danny made his own choice. He's 18. 18-year-olds make stupid choices. It's my job to keep them safe despite themselves. Before I could respond, the cabin door opened. Martha came out. Her apron was covered in blood. Every man surged forward. "He's alive," Martha said quickly. "Still alive, but Miss Libby needs absolute quiet. Nobody goes in. Nobody disturbs her. Understood?" They nodded, stepped back. Martha looked at Jack. "She's doing surgery, real surgery. Says she learned from her father. I've never seen anything like it." "How long?" Jack asked. "She doesn't know. Could be hours." Martha's voice softened. "But Jack, she knows what she's doing. I'd stake my life on it." Martha went back inside. The door closed. And we waited. 2 hours passed. The sun climbed higher. The day warmed. Snow melted from the roofs, dripping in steady rhythm. Men sat, stood, paced, but nobody left. Finally, the door opened again. Libby stepped out. Her dress was stained with blood. Her hair had come loose from its braid. Her face was pale with exhaustion, but her eyes were bright with triumph. "He's alive," she said. "He's going to live." The cheer that went up must have been heard all the way to Cheyenne. Men surged forward, slapping each other on the back, laughing. Some were crying openly. Jack pushed through the crowd, stood in front of Libby. "You saved him. I did what I was trained to do." "No." His voice was fierce. "You did what nobody else in this territory could have done. You performed surgery that most doctors wouldn't even attempt." He pulled her into his arms, held her tight. She sagged against him, all the strength that had sustained her through the operation suddenly draining away. "I was so scared," she whispered. "What if I'd failed? What if my hands had slipped? What if—" "But you didn't," Jack said. "You saved him. You saved his life." Over her shoulder I saw Tom Bradley watching. The old foreman's eyes were wet. He walked over to Libby, waited until Jack released her. "Miss Montgomery," he said gruffly, "I owe you an apology. I doubted you. Thought a woman couldn't handle this kind of work. I was wrong." "You were protecting people you care about," Libby said. "I don't fault you for that." Tom shook his head. "You're a better person than I am. What you did in there," he struggled for words. "My daughter died because there was nobody to help her. But Danny gets to live because you were here, because you knew what to do. He pulled off his hat. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Libby's eyes filled with tears. You're welcome. Tom turned to the assembled men. 3 cheers for Nurse Montgomery. The cheers echoed across the valley. And I watched Libby's face transform, from exhaustion to joy, from doubt to certainty. She'd found her place, her purpose, and in that moment, I knew her story was just beginning. The doctor arrived from Cheyenne 4 hours later. He examined Danny thoroughly, studied Libby's surgical work, asked detailed questions about her technique. Finally, he turned to the assembled crowd. This is some of the finest surgical work I've ever seen, he announced. Better than most surgeons could manage in a proper hospital. Miss Montgomery, where did you train? My father taught me, Libby said. He was a surgeon in Philadelphia. I worked as his assistant for years before his death. Well, he taught you well. The doctor closed his bag. The boy will need careful monitoring, but if infection doesn't set in, he should make a full recovery. You saved his life, young lady, no question about it. Word spread fast. By evening, people were arriving from neighboring ranches, from Cheyenne, all wanting to meet the woman who'd performed the miracle surgery. Mrs. Patterson arrived with her women's auxiliary, brought food, blankets, offers of help. I must apologize, Miss Montgomery, Mrs. Patterson said. Some of us were unkind in our assumptions when you first arrived. Libby looked confused. What do you mean? Mrs. Patterson flushed. We saw a young woman living alone on a man's property. We assumed the worst, that you were his companion. Understanding dawned. Oh, we were wrong, Mrs. Patterson continued firmly, and we're ashamed of ourselves. You're a professional, a healer, and we should have given you the benefit of the doubt from the beginning. People make assumptions, Libby said gently. It's human nature. What matters is that you're here now. Mrs. Patterson's eyes filled with tears. You're very gracious, more gracious than we deserve. That evening, after all the visitors had left, Libby sat on her porch in the twilight. She was exhausted, bone-deep tired in a way she'd never been before, but she was also satisfied. She'd done what she came here to do. She'd saved a life. Footsteps on the path. Jack appeared, carrying 2 cups. Thought you might need this, he said, handing her one. Whiskey. Martha's special blend. Says it cures everything from snakebite to heartbreak. Libby took it, sipped. The burn felt good going down. Jack sat beside her. They looked out at the darkening mountains. Danny's sleeping, Jack said. Peacefully. Martha's sitting with him. Good. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Jack spoke. What you did today, I've been thinking about it, about what it means. What does it mean? It means you're not just a nurse, you're a surgeon, a real surgeon with skills that most doctors would envy. My father was the surgeon, Libby said. I just learned from him. No, Jack turned to face her. You're more than what he taught you. You're your own person, your own kind of healer. He took her hand. Marry me, Libby. She almost dropped her cup. What? I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few months. But I also know that what we have is real, and I don't want to waste time pretending otherwise. Jack, I love you, he said simply. I love your strength, your courage, the way you never give up, the way you see people clearly but still choose kindness. I love you too, Libby whispered. But what? She stood, walked to the porch rail, gripped it tight. I'm afraid, she said. Afraid that this is too good to be true. Afraid that something will happen to destroy it. Like what? She turned to face him, like Marcus Harrison showing up, like my past catching up with me, like the lies and accusations starting all over again. That won't happen. How do you know? Because you're in Wyoming now, not Philadelphia. Out here, what matters is what you do, not what someone says about you. He stood, walked to her. You saved Danny's life today. The whole territory knows it. Nobody's going to believe lies about you now. You don't know Harrison, Libby said. He's persistent, vindictive. He doesn't forgive people who embarrass him. Then let him come, Jack said fiercely. Let him try. He'll find out what it means to go up against a Wyoming rancher and the woman he loves. Libby wanted to believe him, wanted to believe they could be safe, happy, but she'd learned the hard way that happiness was fragile. "Ask me again," she said. "After we're sure. After enough time has passed that we know Harrison isn't coming." Jack's face fell, but he nodded. "All right, I can wait. But Libby?" "Yes? I'm not giving up. I'm going to ask you every day until you say yes." Despite everything, she smiled. "I'm counting on it." 3 weeks passed. Danny recovered steadily. By the end of the first week, he was sitting up. By the end of the second, he was walking with a cane. By the third, he was back to light work. Every day he thanked Libby, until she finally told him to stop. "You're alive," she said. "That's thanks enough." Spring was coming to Wyoming. The snow melted in earnest. Green shoots appeared in the brown grass. Calves were being born. The ranch hummed with activity. And every evening, Jack asked Libby to marry him. And every evening, she said, "Not yet." But the "not yet" was getting softer, less certain. She was starting to believe, starting to hope. Maybe she really could be happy here. Maybe the past really would stay in the past. Then the telegram came. It was a Wednesday morning in late April. The sun was warm. Libby was in her cabin, updating her medical records. Jack burst through the door without knocking. His face was white. "What's wrong?" Libby asked, standing. Wordlessly, he handed her a telegram. She read it again, felt the world tilt. "Dr. Marcus Harrison, arriving, Cheyenne. May 2nd, stop. Investigating unlicensed medical practice, stop. Carrying territorial martial authority, stop. Letter follows, stop." The telegram was from a friend of Jack's in Cheyenne, a lawyer who kept track of legal matters in the territory. "That's in 4 days," Libby said. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "Yes." "He's coming for me." "Yes." She sat down. The telegram fluttered from her fingers. "I should have known," she said. "Should have known he wouldn't let it go." Jack knelt in front of her, took her hands. "Libby, look at me." She raised her eyes to his. "He's not going to win," Jack said. "I promise you that. We'll fight him, with lawyers, with witnesses, with every resource I have." "You don't understand," Libby said. "He's not just coming to destroy my career. He's coming to destroy me." "Why? Why does he hate you so much?" She took a shaky breath. "Because I know something about him. Something he doesn't want anyone to find out." "What?" "The doctor who testified against my father. Dr. Edmund Harrison. The one who lied and said my father had committed malpractice." "Yes?" "Marcus Harrison was his student. His protege. And I think Marcus knows that Edmund lied. Knows that my father was innocent. Maybe even helped cover it up." Jack's eyes widened. "Can you prove it?" "No, it's just a suspicion. But when Marcus attacked me, he said something. He said, 'You Montgomerys never know when to stop asking questions.' At the time, I didn't understand. But now you think he's afraid you'll expose him." "Yes. And the best way to make sure I can't is to destroy my credibility, to make sure nobody will believe anything I say." Jack stood, paced across the room. His jaw was tight with fury. "Then we'll find proof," he said. "We'll find out what really happened to your father. We'll expose Harrison for the liar he is." "How? It's been 12 years. Any evidence is long gone." "Maybe, maybe not." He turned to her. "I'm going to send telegrams to Philadelphia, to people who knew your father. Someone must know something. Someone must have suspected. Jack, I appreciate what you're trying to do. But nothing," he cut her off. "I'm not letting that bastard take you from me, not without a fight." He strode to the door, stopped, looked back at her. "Marry me, Libby, right now, today." "What?" "If you're my wife, you have legal protections, more than if you're just an employee. Marry me. Let me fight for you as your husband, not just your employer." Libby's heart ached. He was offering her everything. Protection, love, a future. But she couldn't accept. Not like this. "If I marry you now," she said gently, People will say I did it for protection, that I used you, and Harrison will use that against us both. I don't care what people say. But I do." She stood, walked to him, took his hands. "Ask me again after this is over, after we've beaten Harrison, after we've proven that I'm here because I choose to be, not because I'm running." Jack pulled her close, held her tight. "I'm going to fight for you," he said into her hair, "with everything I have. You know that, right?" "I know. And when this is over, you're going to marry me." "Yes," she whispered. "When this is over, I'll marry you." It was the first time she'd said yes, and they both knew what it meant. The battle was coming, but they'd face it together. The next 3 days were a flurry of preparation. Jack sent telegrams to Philadelphia, to lawyers, to anyone who might have information about Edmund Harrison's testimony. He hired the best lawyer in Denver, a man named Samuel Whitmore, who'd never lost a case. Tom Bradley organized the ranch hands. Every man who'd been treated by Libby agreed to testify on her behalf. Mrs. Patterson rallied the women of Cheyenne. They would attend the hearing in force, show the community's support for Libby. Even the doctor from Cheyenne agreed to testify, to describe Libby's surgical skill, to vouch for her competence. But Libby knew it might not be enough. Harrison would come prepared. He'd have official papers, legal authority, a marshal backing him up, and he'd have the one thing that always won in the end: doubt. Even a whisper of scandal could destroy a reputation, especially a woman's reputation. The night before Harrison was due to arrive, Libby sat alone in her cabin. She thought about running, just saddling a horse and disappearing into the wilderness. But she'd run once before, and it had solved nothing. This time she would stand and fight. There was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Reverend Clayton standing on her porch. "Reverend, I didn't know you were back." "Arrived this afternoon," he said. "Jack sent for me. Thought you might want someone to talk to, someone neutral." She let him in. They sat by the fire. "I'm scared," she admitted. "More scared than I've been since that night at the station." "Fear is natural," Clayton said. "But remember, you're not the person you were that night. You've proven yourself. Saved lives. Built a community. That means something." "Will it mean something to a judge?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I know this. Whatever happens tomorrow, you'll face it with courage, because that's who you are." They sat in silence for a while. Then Libby spoke. "Reverend, will you pray with me?" "Of course." They knelt by the fire, and Clayton prayed. Not for victory, not for Harrison's defeat, but for truth, for justice, for Libby to have the strength to face whatever came. When he finished, Libby felt calmer, not unafraid, but ready. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome." He stood to leave. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." After he left, Libby went to her medical bag, pulled out the photograph of her parents. "Papa," she whispered, "I'm going to fight for you, for your name, for the truth. I just hope I'm strong enough." She set the photograph on the mantel. Beside it, she placed her father's surgical knife, reminders of who she was, where she came from, what she was fighting for. Then she went to bed, and for the first time in weeks, she slept without nightmares, because tomorrow she would face her demon, and one way or another it would end. "So Harrison came," the young traveler said. "What happened?" Reverend Clayton smiled. "That, my friend, is where the real story begins, because what happened next, nobody expected. Least of all Marcus Harrison." He added wood to the fire. "But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell it proper, the way it deserves to be told." He settled back and began the final part of the tale. Dr. Marcus Harrison arrived in Cheyenne on the 2nd of May, just as the telegram had promised. I saw him step off the train, tall, well-dressed, confident in the way men are when they think the law is on their side. He was accompanied by a territorial marshal, a man named Croft, who looked uncomfortable with his assignment. Harrison walked into town like he owned it, checking into the Cattleman's Hotel, making his presence known, letting word spread that he was here on official business. By evening, the whole territory was buzzing. The woman who'd saved Danny Morrison was about to be put on trial. But what Harrison didn't know, couldn't have known, was what I'd spent the last 3 days doing. See, when Jack sent me to Philadelphia to investigate, I didn't go alone. I took Tom Bradley with me. Tom knew how to ask questions, knew how to get men talking in saloons and back alleys. And we found her. Sarah Whitmore, an old nurse who'd worked at Pennsylvania General Hospital, who'd been there the night Edmund Harrison lied about Henry Montgomery's surgery. She was dying, cancer, had maybe 6 months left. "I've carried this guilt for 12 years, she told us. Her voice was barely a whisper. Knew Edmund Harrison lied. Knew he destroyed a good man. But I was afraid. Afraid of losing my position, my pension. "Will you testify?" I asked. "Help his daughter?" She closed her eyes. Tears leaked from beneath the lids. "I'll do it," she said. "It's time I made things right." So we brought her back to Wyoming. Tom and I carried her in a wagon because she was too weak to ride the train the whole way. We kept her hidden at my church in Silver Creek. Didn't tell anyone except Jack. Let Harrison think he was going to win. The hearing was held in Cheyenne's courthouse on May 4th. A Saturday. The judge was a man named Hendricks, fair but stern. He'd been a territorial judge for 20 years. The courtroom was packed, every seat taken, people standing in the aisles, more outside in the street. Mrs. Patterson had organized her women. They sat in the front rows, dressed in their Sunday best, a wall of respectability. The ranch hands filled the back. 60 men who'd come to support the woman who'd saved their lives and the lives of their friends. Harrison sat at the prosecutor's table, looking smug, sure of himself. Libby sat at the defense table with Samuel Whitmore, the lawyer Jack had hired. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back severe, her hands folded in her lap. She looked calm, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Jack sat behind her, close enough to touch her shoulder if she needed it. Judge Hendricks banged his gavel. "This hearing will come to order. Dr. Harrison, you've filed a complaint. State your case." Harrison stood, smooth as oil. "Your Honor, I'm here on behalf of the Philadelphia Medical Board. We've received reports that Miss Elizabeth Montgomery is practicing medicine without a license in this territory." "She's a nurse," Whitmore objected. "Nurses don't need medical licenses." "She performed surgery," Harrison countered. "Major surgery on a young man named Daniel Morrison. Surgery is the practice of medicine, and practicing medicine without a license is illegal." Judge Hendricks looked at Libby. "Miss Montgomery, did you perform surgery on this boy?" Libby stood. "Yes, Your Honor, I did." "And do you have a medical license?" "No, sir. I'm a trained nurse, not a doctor." "Then technically, Dr. Harrison is correct. You were practicing medicine without a license." The courtroom murmured. Harrison smiled. "However," the judge continued, "this is a frontier territory. Our laws are flexible when it comes to medical care. If Miss Montgomery saved this boy's life, I'm inclined to overlook the technicality." "It's not just about the surgery, Your Honor," Harrison said quickly. "Miss Montgomery has a history of moral turpitude. She was dismissed from her position in Philadelphia for assaulting a physician." "That's a lie," Libby said. Her voice rang clear and strong. "Dr. Harrison attacked me. I defended myself." "Can you prove that?" Harrison asked. His tone was mocking. "Or is it just your word against a respected physician's?" "It's my word against yours," Libby said, "because you're the physician in question." The courtroom exploded. People shouting, the judge banging his gavel for order. Harrison's face flushed. "She's lying. I never touched her." "You cornered me in a supply room," Libby said. Her voice was shaking now, with anger, not fear. "You put your hands on me. You said things no gentleman would say. And when I fought back, when I broke your nose with a bedpan, you had me fired and blacklisted." "Prove it," Harrison sneered. "I don't have to prove it," Libby said. "The people of this territory know my character. They've seen my work. They know what I'm capable of, and they'll decide who they believe." Judge Hendricks looked at Harrison. "Doctor, Harrison, Do you have any evidence of Miss Montgomery's alleged moral failings, beyond your own accusation?" Harrison shifted. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "I have testimony from her former employers, letters documenting her dismissal." "Letters you wrote yourself, I'd wager," Whitmore said dryly. The judge held up a hand. "We'll hear testimony, from both sides. Then I'll make my ruling." For the next 2 hours, witness after witness took the stand. Tom Bradley testified about Danny's injuries, about watching Libby perform surgery that saved the boy's life. Danny himself testified, still young, still recovering. But his words were powerful. "She saved me, Your Honor. I was dying. Everyone knew it. And she brought me back. I don't care about licenses or laws. I care that I'm alive because of her." The doctor from Cheyenne testified, described Libby's surgical technique, called it exceptional and beyond what most doctors could achieve. Mrs. Patterson testified, spoke about the women's auxiliary supporting Libby, about how the community had come to respect and trust her. One by one, they built a wall of testimony, a fortress of support. But Harrison was good. I'll give him that. When it came time for his cross-examination, he was vicious. "Mr. Bradley," he said to Tom, "you say Miss Montgomery saved this boy. But the truth is, you don't know if a licensed physician could have done the same thing. Perhaps with less risk, less trauma." "A licensed physician wasn't here," Tom shot back. "Miss Montgomery was." "Mrs. Patterson," Harrison said, "you testified that the community supports Miss Montgomery. But isn't it true that when she first arrived there were rumors? Whispers about her relationship with Mr. Thornton?" Mrs. Patterson flushed. "We were wrong to gossip. But you did gossip, which suggests that even you had doubts about her character." On and on it went, Harrison chipping away, planting seeds of doubt. And then he called Libby to the stand. She walked to the witness box with her head high, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. Harrison circled her like a wolf circling prey. "Miss Montgomery, you claim your father was a surgeon, that he taught you everything you know." "Yes." "And yet your father died in disgrace, stripped of his license for malpractice. Isn't that true?" Libby's hands clenched. "My father was falsely accused." "By whom?" "By a doctor named Edmund Harrison. No relation to you, I assume?" Harrison's face went pale, just for a moment. Then he recovered. "Dr. Edmund Harrison was a respected physician. If he testified against your father, perhaps he had good reason." "He lied," Libby said. Her voice was steel. "He lied to protect his own career, and my father died because of that lie." "Can you prove he lied?" "Not yet, but I will." Harrison smiled, thin and cruel. "You see, Your Honor, she admits she has no proof, just accusations against a dead man who can't defend himself." He turned back to Libby. "Tell me, Miss Montgomery, when you attacked me in Philadelphia, when you broke my nose, did you consider that perhaps I was simply trying to help you, trying to offer guidance?" "You grabbed me," Libby said. Her voice was shaking. "You put your mouth on my neck. You said I should be grateful for the attention, that no one else would want a Montgomery after what my father did." The courtroom went silent. "You're lying," Harrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Libby stood, faced him directly. "Then why did you follow me here? Why did you come all the way to Wyoming to destroy a woman who's done nothing but save lives? What are you so afraid of?" Harrison's mouth opened, closed. He looked at the judge. "Your Honor, I don't have to tolerate this." "Answer the question," Judge Hendricks said. His voice was like iron. "Why did you come to Wyoming, Dr. Harrison?" To uphold medical standards, to ensure that unlicensed practitioners aren't endangering lives." "Is that all?" Harrison's hands were shaking. "Yes, that's all." "Then you won't mind if we hear from one more witness," I said, standing from my seat in the gallery. Everyone turned to look at me. "Who are you?" the judge asked. "Reverend Samuel Clayton, and I have someone who needs to speak." I walked to the back of the courtroom, opened the door. Tom Bradley wheeled Sarah Whitmore in. She was so frail, so weak, but her eyes were clear. Harrison's face went white as a sheet. "Your Honor," I said, "this is Sarah Whitmore. She was a nurse at Pennsylvania General Hospital. She has testimony regarding the death of Dr. Henry Montgomery and the lies that destroyed him." Sarah's voice was thin, weak, but it carried in the silent courtroom. "I was there," she said, "when Edmund Harrison testified against Dr. Montgomery. I knew it was a lie. Edmund had made mistakes during the surgery. Terrible mistakes, but he blamed Dr. Montgomery to save his own career." "And you said nothing?" the judge asked. "I was afraid. I had a family to support, a pension to protect." Tears ran down her weathered cheeks. "I've lived with that guilt for 12 years, watching a good man's name destroyed, watching his daughter suffer." She looked at Harrison. Marcus Harrison was Edmund's student, his protege. He knew the truth, helped his mentor cover it up. "That's a lie," Harrison shouted. "I never—" "You were there," Sarah continued, "in the hospital the night Dr. Montgomery killed himself. I saw you burning papers in Edmund's office, records, notes, evidence that would have proven Henry Montgomery's innocence." Harrison's face had gone from white to red. "You can't prove any of this." "Actually," Sarah said, "I can." She pulled an envelope from her coat, handed it to me. I gave it to the judge. Inside was a letter, written by Edmund Harrison on his deathbed 3 years earlier, a confession. The judge read it aloud. Edmund admitted to lying about Henry Montgomery, admitted that his own surgical errors had caused the patient's death, admitted that he'd destroyed a good man to save himself, and he named Marcus Harrison as his accomplice, the young doctor who'd helped destroy evidence, who'd blacklisted anyone who questioned the verdict. By the time the judge finished reading, the courtroom was in an uproar. Harrison stood frozen, trapped. "Dr. Harrison," the judge said, "do you have anything to say?" Harrison's mouth worked. No sound came out. Then he turned and ran. The marshal caught him before he reached the door, held him firm. "Dr. Marcus Harrison," Judge Hendricks said, "you came to this territory under false pretenses. You used your position to pursue a vendetta, and you have been complicit in the destruction of an innocent man's reputation." He banged his gavel. "The charges against Miss Montgomery are dismissed. Furthermore, I'm recommending that the territorial governor investigate Dr. Harrison for fraud and conspiracy." He looked at Libby. "Miss Montgomery, your father's name is hereby cleared by this court, and you are authorized to practice medicine in this territory with my full endorsement." The courtroom exploded with cheers. Libby collapsed into her chair, sobbing, not from sadness, from relief. Jack was there instantly, pulling her into his arms, holding her while she cried 12 years of grief and vindication. Harrison was led away in chains, still protesting, still denying, but no one was listening anymore. The celebration went on for 3 days. The whole territory turned out, not just for Libby's victory, but for what it represented: justice, truth. The idea that in Wyoming you could escape your past and build something new. On the 3rd day, Jack found Libby on her porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. "Penny for your thoughts," he said. "I'm thinking about my father," she said, "wishing he could have lived to see this, to know that his name was cleared." "I think he knows," Jack said gently, "wherever he is." They sat in comfortable silence. Then Jack knelt in front of her. "I've asked you this question every day for months. You told me to wait until this was over, until we'd beaten Harrison, until you were free. Jack, Elizabeth Rose Montgomery," he said, "will you marry me? Not because you need protection, not because you're grateful, but because you love me and want to build a life with me." Libby looked at him, this man who'd found her freezing and chosen kindness, who'd fought for her, who'd never doubted her. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped a ring onto her finger, simple gold band with a single small diamond. "It was my mother's," he said. "I've been carrying it for weeks, hoping you'd say yes." She pulled him up, kissed him under the sunset sky. And for the first time in her life, Libby Montgomery felt completely, perfectly free. We held the wedding the first Saturday in June, right there on the Double T Ranch. The whole territory came. Cowboys from neighboring ranches, townspeople from Cheyenne, even Sarah Whitmore, though she was so weak we had to carry her in a chair. Libby wore ivory silk, wildflowers in her hair that Martha had woven. Tom Bradley walked her down the makeshift aisle, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Your father would be so proud," he whispered as they walked. I performed the ceremony, spoke the old words about love and commitment, about two people choosing each other against all odds. When I pronounced them husband and wife, Jack's kiss was gentle, reverent, and the cheer that went up could be heard all the way to the mountains. Reverend Clayton paused, added wood to the fire. "That was 23 years ago," he said. "I'm an old man now, seen a lot of things, but I've never seen a love like Jack and Libby's." "What happened to them?" the young traveler asked. "They built a life, a legacy. Libby opened the first real hospital in Wyoming, trained dozens of nurses. Her innovations in frontier medicine saved hundreds of lives. Jack expanded the ranch, served in the territorial legislature. When Wyoming became a state in 1890, Libby's hospital was one of the arguments for statehood, proof that the territory was civilized, ready. They had 3 children, twin boys in 1890, a daughter in 1892, named her Rebecca after Jack's first wife. "Libby's idea," she said. "Rebecca deserved to be remembered." He smiled. Those children grew up to be healers and leaders, carried on their parents' legacy. And Jack and Libby? They grew old together, still in love at 60 as they'd been at 30. I visited them often, watched them age, watched their love deepen. He was quiet for a moment, remembering. Jack died in 1923, peacefully in his sleep. Libby was holding his hand. His last words were, "Still the most beautiful thing I ever found in a snowstorm." Libby followed him 3 months later. Just let go, went to sleep one night and didn't wake up. They're buried on the hill overlooking the ranch, side by side, under the big Wyoming sky. The fire crackled. The travelers sat silent, moved by the story. Finally the young man spoke. "You said at the beginning you'd seen a miracle. Is that what you meant? Their love story?" "Partly," Clayton said. "But the real miracle wasn't what happened between them. It was what happened in that train station. I don't understand. A woman sat down to die. She'd given up, lost hope, was ready to let the cold take her. And a man who'd been praying for 3 years walked through a door, not knowing what he'd find, just knowing he had to look. That moment, that choice, that's the miracle. One person choosing kindness when they could have walked away. One person choosing to see someone else's pain and do something about it." He looked at each of the travelers. "You asked if I believe in miracles. I do. But they're not flashy, not obvious. They're quiet, small, human. They're a coat wrapped around cold shoulders, a room paid for, a chance given. They're every time we choose to see someone else, really see them, and decide to help." He stood, stretched. That's the story. That's the miracle. 2 broken people who found each other in the darkness and chose light. The young traveler stood too. "Thank you, Reverend, for sharing it. Thank you for listening." Clayton gathered his bedroll. "Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's a long ride." As he settled down for the night, Clayton looked up at the stars, same stars that had shone on that snowy night in 1887, and he smiled. Because somewhere up there, he liked to think Jack and Libby were together, still holding hands, still in love, still proof that grace is real, and that miracles happen every day to those who choose to see them. The fire burned low, the travelers slept, and the Wyoming wind whispered through the grass, carrying stories of love and courage to anyone who would listen.